August 1st, 2025, on the occasion of the 98th anniversary of the founding of the People's Liberation Army, Beijing released a video recording the scene of the helicopter Z-10 approaching US Navy MH-60R in the airspace of the Taiwan Strait.
我是中国陆军航空兵，即将进入我国领空，立即离开，立即离开。
The time was chosen, along with the military holiday, to show strength and to send a message of deterrence. But in this encounter, the U.S. side held absolute superiority. Welcome to Global New Military Updates. This is where the latest developments, military changes, global strategy, and modern weapons power are analyzed with a deep and emotional perspective. Each video is a beat of the times. We analyze, we reflect on power, war, and peace in a turbulent world. Don't take your eyes off the screen, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment below. Foreign military aircraft you are approaching Chinese territorial waters changed direction immediately. Radio voice harshly rang out in the tense atmosphere. 15:10. Taiwan Strait at an altitude of 500 meters, a Chinese Z-10 attack helicopter suddenly crossed the nose of the U.S. Navy's MH-60R Romeo, a dangerous approach. But this position is 50 nautical miles from the Chinese coast in international airspace, where the U.S. has full rights to operate according to international law. So why? Two helicopters had a tense confrontation at this area, caused by being underwater. A local submarine, 20319 Yuan class of China, has maintained a submerged state for 48 hours and was forced to surface to recharge its batteries. As soon as the ship surfaced, U.S. forces were already present to monitor. Tail 20319 tracking mission assigned to MH-60 Romeo, multi-purpose anti-submarine helicopter equipped with embedded sonar surveillance, radar, infrared sensors, and electronic reconnaissance systems. The Romeo is closely monitoring every movement of the submarine. Not accepting the submarine being monitored in a sensitive area, China immediately dispatched an attack helicopter, Z-10, from Xiamen Base, Fujian, with a brief order to intercept and force the U.S. aircraft to leave the area. 3 members on the Romeo helicopter, including 2 pilots and a sensor operator, remained calm because they knew a piece of information that Beijing did not. Unknown. In the next 72 minutes, in an attempt to exert pressure on the U.S. Navy, China accidentally made a serious mistake. The Romeo was not on a simple patrol mission. The fuselage-mounted equipment clusters were port-accurate electronic ANALQ-21, no ASM. The magnet, electronic, capable of receiving 10 all signals emitted from ZM radar frequency, radio communication protocol, and electronic characteristics of the sensor system. All data were systematically recorded while 6 public. China believed it was creating pressure on the opponent. In fact, the Z-10 was just a product developed based on the cheap ABA design framework, added for technical support from Russia. In the 10 years 1990, when Russia needed money and China needed helicopters, the angular shape can create a powerful impression, but compared to MH-60R, the gap is still very large from the quality of anti-submarine sensors, combat data link capability, up to the level of weapon integration. In other words, Z-10 is no different from a common vehicle with an additional shell. The appearance looks strong, but the nature does not change. Next, Chinese pilot launches 2 flares around the helicopter Romeo. This is not an attack group, but a show of force, like a grasshopper kicking a car. The reaction from the U.S. side is immediate. Romeo crew deploys sonar. Immersed in the exact position of the submarine below, the message is clearly transmitted. No need for further explanation. We are still monitoring your ship. Realize that even with helicopter support, the submarine still cannot escape surveillance. China is forced to send the ship to an emergency dive. However, this hasty action has serious consequences. Cavitation. Cavitation occurs when air bubbles form and collapse around the propeller, causing the hull to shake violently due to excessive pressure changes. Fast noise spread in the sea area and immediately was recorded by the sensor system of the entire U.S. aircraft carrier. In anti-submarine warfare, noise is no different from spontaneously transmitting a signal. To signal the main position, the Z-10 pilot's show of force action accidentally pushed the submarine assigned to protect into a dangerous position. If this is a real war, the outcome is almost decided. Worse things are still waiting for the Beijing pilot. 15:28. After 18 minutes, the signal failed. The Z-10 pilot believed that he had finally gained the upper hand, controlled the fire signal to lock on Romeo, but that confidence only lasted exactly 3 seconds, just enough for the U.S. key to activate. The weapon suppression from the escort formation, an EA-18G Growler in the vicinity immediately emitted electronic radiation, using the Nauk 99 jamming boss to suppress the Z-10 system. The result was instantly the cockpit's multi-screen blacked out like a TV with no signal. The entire image distorted, not only lost the ability to track targets, Romeo is also duplicated into many fake signals with illogical characteristics. Some items fly in reverse, some disappear and then reappear immediately. Even one target is displayed right in the cockpit. This is the inevitable consequence when an avionics system based on outdated technology has to confront a modern electronic warfare ALQ-99 complex. Not only causes interference, but also turns the multi-duel into a state of hallucination, with the ability to jump frequencies flexibly across the entire electronic spectrum. This system completely surpasses the signal processing capacity of Chinese radar. When the Z-10 pilot is still busy tracking a frequency, the interference has shifted to 10 other frequencies. Tension increases when the cockpit warning screen signals the entire U.S. aircraft carrier task force simultaneously turns on precision radar scans straight at Z-10. No different from being hit by headlights. On the deck of the F-38 Super Hornet takes off one after another, not to attack, but to send a message. Romeo is not alone. Behind it is the entire Pacific Fleet. In the last effort, the Chinese pilots tried to resist the frequency team increases, the attack to restart the radar. But all measures are 7 failed electronic suppression complex led by Growler, coordinate with the equipment on the surface ship, create a situation of dominating the electronic spectrum. The Z-10 pilot is left with only helplessness when he realizes that he has been completely suppressed, while the MH-60R crew maintains absolute calm, can even chat about everyday things. They clearly understand that in just a few minutes, the situation will make the Chinese side even more humiliated. The Romeo pilot proactively sends another message, slightly tilts the plane, adjusts the sonar, dives straight down to the submarine. Below the ship, despite being supported by helicopters, still cannot escape surveillance, forced continuously maneuvering and changing direction. But each evasive move creates more noise, and the louder the noise, the more accurate the tracking ability of the U.S. sonar. In this situation, the Z-10 pilot is completely unable to intervene or change the final result. The U.S. flight commander discovered, with a calm voice, exuding absolute superiority. Chinese military aircraft. This is a U.S. naval aircraft we are operating in international airspace in accordance with international law. We will maintain the same flight direction and altitude. In short, it is still too young, 7 hopes, because the electronic system does not bring advantages. The Z-10 pilot decided to yaw close at a distance of only 500 meters, hoping that a close approach will turn the situation. At this distance, he can clearly see the U.S. gunner on duty next to the GAU-2150 caliber. Not fired yet, but the Rande message is too clear. While the Z-10 is only equipped with 23mm cannons and than weapon pylons. Air basically, it does not carry torpedoes or specialized anti-submarine systems. Clearly at a disadvantage in a direct confrontation scenario, the difference begins to show clearly. The Z-10 pilot deploys maneuvers to suppress sharp turns, to force the opponent to defend. Before this victory continuously swoops left and right, nose up, and dives. However, each maneuver causes Cho to lose speed sharply. At the same time, the fuselage must endure G pressure, near the design limit, while the Romeo, based on the proven Blackhawk frame, maintained superior stability. Result, the Chinese pilot pushes himself into a state of overload, while the US side hardly needs to react. At this point, the sensor combat balance is completely tilted in the US's favor. The NAR-47 missile warning system on the Romeo records and stores all the maneuver characteristics of the Z-10, maximum rotation speed of approximately 20 degrees per second, and the ability to climb 12 meters per second. These data will be used to program precisely for US missiles in missions to intercept similar helicopters. In other words, Z-10 is writing its own 7-defeat scenario. At the same time, the FRIER camera on Romeo records images in the high-resolution infrared range. If it contains all the hotspots, the exhaust reaches approximately 450 degrees Celsius. Plus, movement is approximately 180 degrees Celsius. These thermal characteristics allow U.S. engineers to pinpoint the area to aim for the thermal seeker, making them a weak point in a real combat scenario. In reality, the Chinese pilot now accidentally becomes the target. Experiment instructions on how to disable his own helicopter if he believes their forces on the aircraft can turn the situation. Further developments will prove otherwise. The 23mm cannon of Z-10 has limited effectiveness, designed primarily to destroy targets ground at very close range. When confronting a maneuvering helicopter at a distance of a few hundred meters, the chance of hitting the target is almost negligible. On the contrary, GAU-21, equipped on MH-60R, has an effective range of nearly 2,000 meters. Using explosive piercing ammunition capable of penetrating the Z-10 cockpit with current manufacturing standards and configuration, Z-10 is unlikely to withstand this type of fire. In this situation, Z-10 is operating in a light configuration without carrying torpedoes or specialized anti-submarine equipment. The priority target is to hang around for a long time and show off, rather than face-to-face confrontation with a platform optimized for anti-submarine missions. Like Romeo in Z-10 cockpit, warnings activated simultaneously. Signal lights covered the screen, signaling an emergency. Control commands became sluggish. The fuselage shook violently, signaling mechanical overload. Chinese pilot clearly felt the instability. The control stick seemed to be fighting the plane itself, but retreating meant facing disciplinary action. He muted the warning and forced the machine to perform one more maneuver. Finally, in that effort, the Chinese pilot repeatedly tried to lock the radar, but each attempt became valuable data for experts. Electronic warfare US system on Romeo recorded everything from each frequency jump, from pulse pattern, to every attempt to penetrate the jamming layer, forming a profile. Details of the radar's operating mechanism, Z-10. When Chinese pilots switched to laser indication via the photoelectric system, sensor on Romeo not only detected but also accurately identified the type of device and the software version control. This means the US can develop countermeasures not only for the Z-10 facing, but for all vehicles using the same architecture. A single encounter is enough to expose the weaknesses of an entire generation system. Technical condition of the Z-10 quickly. 6D. The engine must run at approximately 105% continuous power. Creates a brighter I/O bloom in about 40% compared to standard mode. Romeo's player records this thermal pattern detail for reference for the homing head. Future Thermal Seeker Electronic Intelligence. 10. Collection operations are even more serious. All communications between pilot and ground commander are captured. Predictable frequency hopping allows the U.S. system to model and standardize wide-area jamming measures. The longer it lasts, the more the Z-10's performance declines. Hydraulic pressure 6 drops due to overheating. Movement cluster temperature exceeds safety threshold.
Control actuators overload causes choke-flight response to become sluggish. Helicopter falls into a state of self-depletion due to being forced to operate beyond the limit designed. Exactly 16:22, Chinese pilot observes Romeo's embedded sonar still transmitting signals. Confirms submarine below. Never escaped surveillance after 72 minutes of tension. He has not achieved any results in the effort to force the U.S. aircraft to retreat. Finger hovers over the communication button to report 7 defeats, but the pilot clearly understands ground command has grasped the situation because they are tracking the same radar screen, while the U.S. flight crew has collected 10 full 72 minutes high-value intelligence data. Electronic warfare system accurately determines the TON need. Suppression of missiles with parameters. Details of aiming points. Tactical computer fully grasps the rules. Mobility of Z-10 to build countermeasures. China's message, showing off power. The opponents set reality. America turns the encounter into a screen to collect 10 electronic intelligence. Extremely valuable. Z-10 is just the shell. The power inside is still the limit of old technology. Meanwhile, MH-60AD and EA-18G Growler prove absolute superiority. Electronic suppression turns Chinese radar blind. Sony continues to lock down the submarine Levin, and all tactical data of Jak-10 was completely seized by the U.S. after 72 minutes of confrontation. Jak-10 did not achieve any results other than exposing itself. The weakness of the industry sent to Beijing is very clear. In the technology era, cheap and lack of depth cannot be compared with modern systems. Comprehensive integration. The question left for us: can similar collisions become the tinder in a major conflict in this sensitive area? If you find this video valuable and useful, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts below. I'm Hai. See you in the next video.